What is going on, everyone? Ox here with another video. If you're new to the channel, we do upload Pokemon Go content mostly related to PvP, and if you're a returning subscriber like Lisa Setafano, thank you for the support. In today's video, we are taking a look at some battles in the Ultra League Fantasy Cup, showcasing a team which helped me to reach Legend rank for Season 15, as well as climbing into the 3100 ELO range. This team will consist of Tapu Fini in the lead, with a double dragon backline, Giratina Origin running a full ghost moveset, and Haxorus with a very versatile moveset for this meta, in counter, the legacy move Breaking Swipe, and Earthquake to provide some coverage for the fairy types. Now initially I was running this team with Shadow Scizor in the lead to provide better coverage for the fairy types. However, the more battles I did, the less fairies I would see, and I made the call to switch out Scizor in exchange for Tapu Fini, and that worked absolute wonders for me. There is going to be a lot of battles in this video, so sit back, relax, and let's hop into them. Now unfortunately, while I was recording the Legend set battles, I didn't realize until the very end that I actually wasn't recording anything. Now I'm not sure why nothing was recorded because I did hit record, but that's another story. The main issue now is that I hit Legend rank, but I had no footage. So I made the decision to continue using this team in the 3000 ELO range and see just how high we could go in a set of 5 battles. So that is how we are going to start this video right now. On my run to Legend rank, I went either 13-2 or 12-3 with this team. I don't recall because unfortunately it wasn't recorded, but I know we went on a pretty epic win streak. And in this first matchup, we are going to be leading Tapu Fini into a Scavalier. This is actually a pretty solid matchup for Tapu Fini, but I swap out into Giratina Origin, hoping to lure out the fairy type if they have it. This is a very dominant matchup for Giratina, so I'm surprised to see the opponent staying in and tanking that Shadow Ball, especially when you consider that they have a very solid answer to Giratina in the form of Como-O, and the late swap out also allows us to pick up a shield here. And now Tapu Fini is going to come back in and basically wall this Como-O unless it's running something like Boom Burst. Both Dragon Claw and Close Combat are going to be resisted, and this is the position you want to be in. Tapu Fini soaking up damage and a shield advantage for Haxorus. And as you're going to see throughout these battles, at least in the early stages of the meta, many people were not prepared for Haxorus with a shield advantage, and there is going to be a common theme of many top lefts from the opponent throughout these sets of battles. So jumping into this next one, we have Tapu Fini into Excadrill. This is a beautiful lead, and this time we're not going to swap out because the opponent is going to be forced to swap out instead, and they come in with something that is going to cause serious harm to our backline, Shadow Granbull with Charm. Now of course we do have to stay in this matchup, but Tapu Fini is bulky enough where it should be able to reach 2 Surfs and force both of these shields from the opponent, at which point we will swap out into Giratina Origin, and it is going to take a lot of damage, but we are going to reach the Ominous Wind and keep this Giratina at about 50% HP with 2 shields, and Giratina itself also does very well against Excadrill, so we're going to build up to the Shadow Ball, take out the Excadrill, and the opponent is going to come in with a Giratina altered in the back. This isn't the greatest thing to see, however we do get fortunate that the opponent is going to throw the move on alignment. CMP tie is going to be in the favor of Origin, and them not being able to farm Giratina with Shadow Claw is going to allow Haxorus to reach a Breaking Swipe, which is going to fall just short of knocking out Giratina, but is going to lower the attack. That's going to allow us to swap out into Tapu Fini, and because of the attack drop from Breaking Swipe, Giratina will not be able to Shadow Claw down and have a Dragon Claw ready for the Haxorus if it was forced to come back in. So for this next battle, we have Tapu Fini taking on a Giratina altered in the lead, and although the PvPoke simulations do favor Tapu Fini in this matchup, those are entirely based on Tapu Fini successfully landing a Moonblast. So most of the time I'll just go straight Moonblast because Giratina will survive, and I feel like they tend not to shield the first one on the majority of occasions, but generally speaking this is not a matchup I enjoy playing out with Tapu Fini because it is highly bait dependent. Now another option would be to swap out into Giratina Origin instead, and in this particular matchup that would be the better play because we would lure out a Primarina, and it is not running Waterfall, it is running Charm, which I found to be very rare for this meta, at least at the time of these battles. But if there's one Pokemon this team does not want to see, especially once Tapu Fini is gone, it is a Charm user because it is going to sweep the backline. and I would go as far as saying that Primarina with Charm is probably the biggest core breaker to this team, because even Tapu Fini is going to struggle against it. But diving into this next battle, we have what I consider to be the most common lead for this meta, Alolan Sandslash, and you are going to see so many of them throughout these battles. It was really making me consider leading with Haxorus or even running a Firefang Reshiram in the lead. Almost every time the Sandslash lead would be paired with a Tapu Fini in the back. If they swap out into the mirror match, I just look to play it out, land the Moonblast or get a shield, and that's pretty much the role of Tapu Fini on this team. It mainly operates as a sponge. All I'm really looking to do with Tapu Fini in these battles is to deal damage or take shields. To be honest, my plan was sort of just to take a shield advantage with Haxorus and exploit the fact that there really just wasn't many Pokemon running Charm in this meta. Now obviously if they do happen to have a Pokemon with Charm aligned onto Haxorus, it's not going to matter how big of a shield advantage I have, we are going to get destroyed. But it felt like a calculated risk in that more often than not, Haxorus would be in a position where the opponent is not running a Pokemon with Charm, and I did leave in every battle in which we encountered a Charm user in this video, and we likely are going to lose the majority of those matchups. But for every other matchup where we didn't encounter a Charm user, this team did have a pretty high win rate. In other words, this team is basically the opposite of Chelsea, in that Chelsea spent 1.1 billion with no calculation of risk, just hoping things would work out, and they keep losing. This team analyzed the meta, saw that there was no Charm, and it resulted in a lot of winning. So in case Todd Bowley is watching this video and still looking to throw away some of his money, I will work for very cheap, and I could probably get a win or two as the manager of Chelsea. Anyways, we got Tapu Fini into another Sandslash lead. The opponent swaps out into Galarian Weezing. We are going to stay in that matchup with Tapu Fini, come in with the Giratina, looking to Shadow Claw down, as unfortunately, 1 HP and a Drain. Now Play Rough would take out about 70% of a Giratina's HP, so we're kind of forced to shield there, and this isn't the position we want to be in. Typically the game plan is to take a shield advantage and close it out with Haxorus, but in this particular matchup we are actually down a shield, and the opponent has another Pokemon that would be considered a pretty big core breaker to this team, Flygon. This is a very interesting Pokemon for this meta, does core break a lot of teams, and once we give up the shield there, I don't think there's any chance we win this matchup. Would basically need to bank a move on the Giratina Origin, successfully farm the Alolan Sandslash to get off a breaking swipe in order to force the Flygon's final shield, and then hope the Flygon does not have a move ready because it is going to win CMP against Giratina Origin. So we needed a lot of things to happen in that battle to come back from that tough position, but very well played from the opponent. GG, let's hop into the next one. And as you can see, we've reached the point now in the battles where everyone is leading Alolan Sandslash. It's not a bad matchup for Tapu Fini, but I find that in a lot of these matchups, the opponent is going to try and swap out into a fairy type. So I try to hold off from throwing energy, especially if they come in with Tapu Fini. Catching a Surf would be a devastating blow, and they would have likely caught it that time, so thankfully it was a Galarian Weezing instead. We're just going to stay in here with the Tapu Fini. Like I said, it operates as a sponge. Giratina is going to come in. This is very similar to the last matchup. However, for some reason, the opponent actually didn't reach a move this time. I feel like they probably should have had a move at that point, but we'll take it. Maybe they didn't. Maybe I don't know how to count. But what they do have is a double fairy team, and this is very bad news for a double dragon backline. So we're going to build up to the earthquake here, just hoping they think it's a breaking swipe bait, and bang, there it is. Would have really preferred to counter down and preserve this shield, but it doesn't matter because breaking swipe is going to lower the attack, which will be enough to allow Giratina Origin to survive an ice punch from the Shadow Sandslash, at which point we could Shadow Claw down and win the battle. Now knowing that, you might be thinking, why are we throwing Ominous Wind? That's the lose con. Harry Maguire, hello? But when you're addicted to the boost, you gotta fish for it anyways. And thankfully, we're able to Shadow Claw down and pick up the win regardless. Which keeps me from having to upload another Misplays 101 video with yours truly, Harry Maguire. So jumping into this next battle, we have the Tapu Fini mirror match. I have a 6 attack IV, so generally speaking, we are going to lose CMP here the majority of times. I pretty much never bait in this matchup, especially in the lead, and I'm also really never going to shield the opponent's move either. So I'm just taking the gamble that they actually go for the Surf bait, we land the Moonblast or get a shield, and then we swap out into Giratina Origin. Now right here, we actually simultaneously swap and the opponent comes in with a Pokemon that beats not only Giratina Origin, but also Haxorus. Now it's not as dominant as a fairy type with Charm, but Altaria is a pretty hard counter to this backline as well. And if Altaria wasn't enough, guess what? The opponent also has a Pokemon with Charm. So this is one of the easiest top lefts you're going to see. Sometimes with this team you feel like Manchester City, other times you feel like Manchester United, getting embarrassed by Tottenham. But here we go with the next battle, and once again we have an Alolan Sandslash in the lead. Like I said, these things are everywhere in this meta. Tapu Fini here going to stay in, throw the Surf. The opponent this time is not swapping out. We are going to end up losing this match in these 0 shields, but I don't really care. Going to come in with Haxorus, get an energy lead for whatever's left in the back, and as long as they don't have Charm, we should be in a decent position. Opponent comes in with Tapu Fini. We're going straight for the Earthquake. This time the opponent is going to respect it, and this felt a bit too early for a Moonblast, or maybe I was just feeling lucky. We call the Surf, swap out into Giratina Origin, and the opponent once again has an opportunity to bait. This time we will respect the Moonblast, and they successfully get off the Surf bait. Going for the Shadow Ball, opponent is going to let that go through. They have a Giratina Origin of their own in the back. Going to throw the Shadow Ball right here. This is going to force the opponent's shield. At this point, I'm just going to look to let the Giratina Origin go down. All we pretty much need is one breaking swipe here from the Haxorus in order to take out the Giratina. If they survive, we will be able to shield this move. One counter should be enough to take them out, and Haxorus once again going to close out that game in Haxorus style. So jumping into this next battle, we are leading Tapu Fini this time into Galarian Weezing. This is a pretty decent matchup here for Tapu Fini, and definitely where we would want to see Weezing. Opponent swaps out into Giratina Altered. In a previous battle, I mentioned that I don't like to bait with Tapu Fini here, but I think this is a different situation when they swap in. Going for the Surf bait to keep some residual energy, and then swap out into the Giratina Origin. Now having gone down 1 shield already, a lot of pressure to not go down 2 shields to 0 here. So this Shadow Ball should be a lock to go through. Bang, there it is. Galarian Weezing is going to come back in, building up towards the Shadow Ball, and I'm actually going to decide to burn a shield right here. I either want to get off some damage against this Weezing or force the second shield from the opponent. If they decide to shield, they're still going to be forced to throw before I reach another move, and in this particular case they actually go for Overheat, which is even better because it's almost guaranteed to force the opponent to swap out. But now they're ahead by a turn, and it's time to put those rank 2 IVs to use. 1 HP and a dream. Rank 2 Haxorus coming up clutch, preserving that shield, which I think was required in order for Tapu Fini to close out this battle. But maybe we just got lucky. If we shield up the Haxorus, we could either lower the attack on the Weezing after with a breaking swipe, maybe Tapu Fini still closes out the match, or maybe Haxorus outpaces to an Earthquake and we win the battle in an even more epic way. Hard to say, but on this channel, you know, with a rank 2, we gotta do it for science. Next battle, we got Tapu Fini into Haxorus. Opponent immediately swaps out into a Shadow Scizor, and I come in with Giratina Origin, which is a decent response. But the reason I swapped out so quickly was because I saw the Steel Bug typing and instantly assumed it was a Scavalier, which would be a much better matchup for Giratina than this one. I am, however, totally fine with how this played out. We give up Switch, but we now have a 2 shield advantage. Coming with Tapu Fini to soak an Iron Head, shield up the second one to have a Moonblast ready to go against potentially Haxorus, although it would be suicidal. So the opponent will come in with Registeel instead, and now we are the ones with a 1-turn advantage in this Haxorus mirror match. And since they're not running that rank 2 clutch defense, they're instead going to get this. Bang, there it is. Registeel comes back in, doesn't want the smoke, and this team is absolutely cooking at this point. Tapu Fini lead once again into another Alolan Sandslash, the opponent this time swapping out into Tapu Fini. We are going to throw the Moonblast right here. Opponent lets that go through, so we swap out into Giratina Origin. At this point, outpacing to the Shadow Ball, opponent is going to decide to shield. It was a CMP tie. I decide to call the bait because even if we're wrong, we're still in a dominant position. Their Tapu Fini is now so low, I'm okay with letting Giratina go down. This should only be a surf, so we will continue to water gun down. Opponent now likely to come back in with the Sand Slash. Once again, going to soak this up, and we are going to throw a surf before swapping out into the Haxorus. This is basically the scenario we play for in each game. Shield advantage with Haxorus. Staying in to throw an Ice Punch, we are going to shield that up, and they have a Giratina Origin in the back. This is not a great matchup for Haxorus. However, with an energy lead like this, we are going to absolutely pound on these breaking swipes, and there is only so much Giratina Origin could take before it will break. Opponent trying to pull out the boost play, pretty much their only hope at this point. Breaking swipe going to take out the Giratina. Sand Slash comes back in. Tapu Fini water guns down. GG. Off to the next one, where we are surely to see another Alolan Sand Slash lead. And there it is, bigger brain than Alakazam with predictions like this. This matchup is a lot better for Tapu Fini against the non-Shadow. The opponent is going to need to shield at least once if they want to maintain switch advantage. Generally speaking, when I play with Tapu Fini in the lead, I don't really care for switch advantage. Like I've said, Tapu Fini is basically the sponge on this team, looking to force a shield or just do as much damage as possible, setting up for the end game where we hope to avoid Charm. It looked like the opponent might have been able to Shadow Claw down there. Would have been close, but I think they would have been able to do it. Since they threw, it makes it a lot easier for Haxorus since we don't have to burn a shield. They come in with Tapu Fini. We could apply a lot of pressure now with the Earthquake. And after getting the second shield, we are going to swap out into Giratina Origin. Unless they have something like Guzzlord in the back, Giratina is going to do very well here, especially up 2 shields. If they had something with Charm, it would have come in already. But I think Giratina with 2 shields could even defeat some Pokemon with Charm, to be honest. It is a very strong pick for this meta, and the opponent has had enough. They don't want the smoke. Let's hop into the next one. So in this next matchup, we are going to see another Steel type in the lead, but this time it's Registeel. This is a tough matchup for Tapu Fini, especially if they're running Zap Cannon. Pretty much unwinnable, so we swap out into Giratina Origin. The opponent comes in with Clefable, but they took a very long time to swap out. That gave Giratina a big energy lead, and that could be enough to flip this matchup. Even so, we need a lot of things to go right for us. Landing the Shadow Ball was huge, but now we need to hope that we shield Moonblast and not Meteor Mash. The opponent is cooperating, and at this point we could go straight Ominous Wind. We really need to take Switch here in order to have Haxorus onto the Registeel, and we just barely make it on the CMP tie. Ominous Wind going to take out the Clefable, and Giratina is still relatively healthy. It also looks like the opponent is not running Flash Cannon, which means that they are going to need a very aggressive lock-on down. Unfortunately, we did get the attack drop from the Moonblast, which was very unlucky, and the second attack drop from the Zap Cannon means that Giratina isn't going to do as much damage output here. But if there was ever an example of just how powerful Giratina Origin is within this meta, it took out a Clefable and about 80% of a Registeel. That is absolutely insane, but the opponent is running a double fairy team, so we're not exactly out of the woods yet. But as you can see, this matchup was very dependent on winning switch advantage, and it was really only possible because the opponent took so long to swap out into Clefable. If they had just come in 1 turn earlier, Clefable would have outpaced the Giratina Origin, Registeel would not be left in the red, and this team would be left for dead. Instead, we are going to get another opponent to submit in fear of Haxorus. Although in that battle, it was entirely Giratina Origin doing the heavy lifting. Speaking of Giratina Origin, here it is. And this isn't a matchup I like to play out with Tapu Fini because it's too bait dependent. I personally think Giratina Origin is more comfortable in that matchup, so I swap out into my only real answer to Giratina Origin, which is the Mirror Match. And we do have 15 attack IV here, so we should be able to win CMP tie. Should be able to survive this Ominous Wind and still have enough HP to reach the Shadow Ball. Opponent though swaps out into Tapu Fini, which I am totally fine with. They're going to water gun us down, but we are going to come in with the Sponge, soak up this Moonblast, at which point we will swap out into Haxorus. And Tapu Fini is basically in a range now where it could be countered down and not be able to reach another Moonblast. So we're going to take the resisted surf damage, and the opponent comes in with the Scavalier. We are absolutely loaded on energy. Could have went for the Earthquake, but I decided to go for the Breaking Swipe. Opponent does not shield. At this point, we're just going to commit to 3 Breaking Swipes, but they actually swap out into Giratina to catch the 3rd. This is going to force the shield. We come in with the Tapu Fini, and instead of clicking on the Moonblast, we click on the bottom of the screen. That almost cost us big time. And believe me, I would have been raging if we lost the battle that way, especially if we were not legend rank yet. That would have been infuriating, but thankfully we still pull it out. Let's hop into the next one. Tapu Fini into Haxorus, a very bait dependent matchup for both of these Pokemon. The opponent swaps out into a Steel type. Thought it was Registeel, so I came in with Giratina Origin. It's actually a Persiker. So similar to the Shadow Scizor Scavalier confusion, Registeel, Persiker is another one that could get you. But from what I've seen, they do not like to shield the first move, and Persiker goes down, Haxorus comes back in, and even though we are 50 in attack, Giratina wants to survive. Unfortunate we clicked Ominous Wind instead of Shadow Ball like a noob. And notice here they stop attacking. Maybe they were waiting their switch timer to get an energy lead on Sand Slash, but it doesn't matter, because now they're stuck against Haxorus, and like we've seen throughout this video, when Haxorus comes in, they have nowhere to go except the top left of their screen and make an exit. We close out these battles with a perfect 5-0 to bring us to 31-17 ELO. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and a comment down below. Thanks for watching.